Welcome, everybody, to the 8th episode of our Industrial Strength Podcast. It's a podcast more focused on industrial fire department.
Hazmat harder.
That's right. With me, you remember Jeff and Steve, my co-hosts. So, once again, we're all members on the Industrial Fire Department, the same one. That's how we all met. So, we're here to bring you an interesting call that we had.
So the call, we received I believe it was a call from dispatch or operations about an osmium tetroxide.
That's easy for you to say.
Easier said than done. Jeez.
Yeah, tetroxide, yeah.
Thanks, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a spill and a subsequent building evacuation early afternoon on an early spring day. Our responders were met up with the operational personnel on one of the sides of the building to obtain an overview of that situation. What happened is during the charge of that operation of the osmium, operations staff accidentally broke a bottle containing what was believed to be about 15, 20 grams of that osmium. Yeah. Randy, how big of a glass bottle is that?
These are like small little glass vials. This is like a weird kind of thing where it's a powdered metal and it comes in like a glass tube. And I'm trying to think like a cigar tube is like really what it is. And so, but it's a weird thing because it's like completely sealed. There's like no cap. So you have to be in PPE. You have a glass cutter. You got to score this little glass tube, break it open. And that's what they knocked over is a glass tube that contained the osmium in it.
So, as much as we talk about lack of engineering controls, I think for the most part, the engineering controls worked fairly well in this. The charge area for that osmium is in a fume hood. It's on the second floor, which it is kind of significant, but that spilled material, it was contained just to that benchtop surface within its hood. Operations staff attempted to clean up that spill with rags. I mean, really, rags. But, and there was that quench solution.
Right. That's going to come in handy for what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. All the people were evacuated as a precaution, as a permissible exposure limit for osmium is 2 micrograms per cubic meter, and that's over an 8-hour weighted average. So,
and do you know that's like super, super small? So think about it, like a gram isn't much, right? So a microgram is 1 and 5 or a point and 5 zeros and then the 2. So it is a tiny, 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 tiny amount per square meter. That's insane.
I think a gram goes over for what, $20 now?
Depends on what grams we're pushing. I'm just saying.
No more dime bags.
Allegedly. But, I have to say about this call, and this is one of the things that popped into mind later, was when this call first came out, man, I thought we were being punked. I really, really did. Like, I thought this was a fake call to begin with. Like, for the first 10 minutes on scene, I thought they were screwing with us. I thought it was like a fake call. And I don't know if you guys remember this or not, but like, I kid you not, like 4 days prior to this call, someone had specifically called me and asked me what we would do if we had an osmium spill. So I thought this was like a fake. Remember how we talked about in the previous episode, like audits? I thought this was a fake audit. For like the first 10 minutes, I'm like, no, seriously, like, where's the leadership in environmental health and safety? Like, where's the auditor? Where's the insurance person? I don't believe this. Like, no one showed up and no one showed up.
Were you starting to have flashbacks of another call we might be talking about later, Randy?
Yeah, exactly. And it was definitely in the back of my mind, like, wait, I've heard this song before. But you're right, we're going to cover that in a couple episodes. This is going to be a good call. But so I just wanted to get out of the way. The first couple minutes, I thought we were being punked on this. I couldn't believe it. But how about let me jump into, since we're talking about osmium, let me jump into that chemistry section, man, and talk about that a little bit. So osmium tetroxide is like a weird cat. The fact that it's a metal, and typically metals are used in chemistry as a catalyst to speed things up. Same kind of thing here, except this metal catalyst does something very specific. It's an oxidation metal. So it helps add oxygens onto things. But this is like a weird cat, and the reason it's like sealed in a glass tube is because this metal, when it's exposed to air, it turns right to a gas. It goes from solid metal into a gas, which is why that exposure limit is so freaking tiny. So the tiniest whiff of this stuff puts you right over that 8-hour time average and puts you right into toxicity. So that's why they have it sealed in glass so it doesn't get exposed to oxygen, so it doesn't turn into a gas, which, once again, completely crazy. Very, very few metals do this, right? So the only other thing that I can think of off the top of my head that's a metal that kind of vaporizes so easily is mercury. So definitely another weird class of chemical. But once again, osmium tetroxide, when we get it in the little vial, it's a pale yellow crystal solid mass. It's going to have some sort of unpleasant odor. But once again, like we talked about with the previous podcast, I don't know who smells this stuff to say it's got like some sort of odor, but it's associated with a chlorine-like odor. Once again, I'm sure they got a line of people somewhere. Just, I don't know. I've never seen this line of people. But also, the tetroxide is highly poisonous. Once again, it doesn't take very much to convert it to gas. It'll do it readily at room temperature. Just getting it exposed to air does it. But remember when Steve had mentioned the quench that was there, and the operators are trying to clean up the mess with? Like, that's going to come in handy because like there are a couple different things that can quench osmium tetroxide. Yeah, easy for me to say too.
It's hard.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, exactly. So there are a couple different things that can be used to quench osmium. Sodium sulfide is one of them. Sodium sulfite or corn oil, oddly enough. All those things will actually reduce its oxidation state from osmium tetroxide, which has 4 oxygens, to osmium dioxide, which has 2. And once you reduce the amount of oxygens on it, it changes properties quite a bit, because once you hit it with that quench, it no longer can turn into a gas. It actually turns from like a light yellow colored solid into a dark colored granule, almost like black sand. And then it will not turn into a gas at all. And it makes it much easier to clean up. So,
hey, Randy, what kind of, if you're exposed to it, what should you expect?
That's a great question. So I don't know off the top of my head. It's toxic for sure, but I'm thinking if it's going to oxidize, right, it's going to destroy your whatever you come in contact with.
More respiratory.
Right. So it's going to destroy your mucous membranes. It'll probably oxidize your skin, leaving chemical burns. But it's not, once again, it's described as having like a chlorine-like odor, but it doesn't really attack like an acid would. So oxidizers attack the body a little differently. So it's going to want to tear apart and bond oxygen to things. So that's where you kind of get the chemical burn damage with the destroyed skin and destroyed mucous membranes in the lungs.
Okay.
Now, back to our call. Building representatives actually were asked about the presence of a quench solution for that osmium tetroxide, and it was conveyed to us at that time that 5% solution of sodium bisulfite was there for quenching, and it was in a bottle in the hood next to the hood on the floor of where the spill actually occurred.
Yeah, and maybe that's a good thing to bring out was that all these operations, like the osmium spill, the osmium charging, this is all done in like an air hood, like a built-in air hood in chemical production to try and sequester the vapors. Because once again, it was an engineering control, which was done nicely. Don't get me wrong, but that doesn't mean that it captured everything, right? Because I think on this call, some of the stuff actually fell outside the hood.
It did.
Mm-hmm. Kind of right by where that bottle was sitting on the floor.
So coincidentally.
Weird. So for us, we had to determine our PPE for this call, which was a little bit of a unique one for us.
Right.
The remediation of relatively coarse solids would normally fall under our level C protective suits and air purifying respirators. But due to the toxic nature of the osmium and the fact that it can become a corrosive gas as soon as it hits the air, we actually decided to go in level B hazmat suits with SCBAs just for entry team 1 and 2. Just entry team 1. While entry team 2, who was also our RIT team on this particular call, donned structural bunker gear with SCBAs, which wasn't functionally equivalent for the level Bs for us.
Right. I think we were more worried about respiratory issues and the gas, right? And so I think that's why we went with what we did, right? Because we knew as soon as we hit it with that quench, it's going to kind of brick it up into that dark colored solid, which is no longer going to turn into a gas. So we knew our first thing to do was we wanted to get it quenched. And so that's why I think the bees was the most appropriate thing to do.
Yeah, especially for the people working with the quench and with the powder. So,
right, because everyone knows if you're in a level A, you lose a certain level of dexterity, visibility. It's much more fatiguing to wear for any length of time. So bees were a much more comfortable option. They gave our guys much more utility and maneuverability.
I don't know. It was pretty warm in that building. Me being in that fire gear, I was pretty warm in there.
That I believe, man. Fire gear traps a lot of heat, a lot more than a hazmat suit does.
Oh yeah. So when it comes to our PPE selection, one of the things that we do use is that hazmat IQ. I think Randy's talked about this several different times, and also the National Institute of Health PubChem site.
Yeah.
Both of those did agree with that level B protection with an SCBA. So
right, and that's one of the things I love about PubChem is I have yet to throw a chemical at it where it didn't have a response page for me, where it didn't tell me something about that molecule, the hazards, safety indications, side reactions. PubChem's a pretty useful site if you can read through it. It's almost like an SDS.
Yeah, Hazmat IQ. I mean, I really enjoy using that as well.
I agree.
I think it's a lot faster. I mean, PubChem is, don't get me wrong, is still a good site.
It is. And the nice thing about Hazmat IQ over PubChem, PubChem never tells you meters. Hazmat IQ, though, that system, when you go through it to discern hazards, it tells you PPE, it tells you meters, tells you, like what level of PPE, which is nice. It tells you,
Sure.
if A, B's, or C's are applicable. And I really, really like the fact that it doesn't have to be chemical specific. It's chemical family, right? So it makes it a lot easier to interpret. It's not, it takes a little practice to get used to the system, but I think it's much more user friendly than PubChem. And I love the fact that it gives you the meter selection as well with Hazmat IQ.
I agree. Yeah. So the plan of action, it was really discussed amongst the senior members of our hazmat team. For this, the plan was for entry team 1 to contain that remaining osmium solids into a single 1 gallon Nalgene bottle. Pretty much just a plastic bottle, specific towards chemicals, and it was to collect any of that contaminated solids into a second one gallon bottle too. That benchtop would then be sprayed with a quench solution to mitigate any of that remaining osmium not bottled up, and that liquid absorbed by the pads, and then it was placed into that second bottle as well. Both bottles would then be placed into a decon pool, which was set up I believe it was just outside of that door.
Because we're talking like an exit door from the building, right?
Right, yep. I know it was set up under that safety shower. I'm just trying to remember where exactly we had that set up.
I think we might have a layout somewhere out there.
Hey, now. That looks pretty.
Oh, hey, look at there.
Yeah. So this is one of those things where we had space to set up, and we really did set up quite well, right? So on this map, you can see the green little box, which is really, it's not on the roof. We're not playing on the roof of this building, but it's the approximate location inside the building where that chemical hood and the spill was.
But you know what? That wouldn't be our first call on a roof.
No, actually would not. Maybe that should be another episode. Everything we ever done on a roof.
Yeah. There. Yeah.
Our rooftop operations.
But so I had said that was on the second floor, and the stairs, that was just toward the top of that stairs. So I was entry team 2, so I was right at the bottom of the stairs. But one thing that was really hard to see was that entry team 1, because you had to go up the stairs, and I believe it was just to the left.
Yep. And that was actually a little bit tough for us too, being on entry team 1, being able to have that constant visual with you guys. So
Yeah.
I think we actually had our third member of Entry Team 1 kind of keep stepping out of the lab room and coming back to the stairs to try and maintain a visual of some sort.
Yep, you did. So, hey, Steve, what kind of a decon plan did we kind of come up with?
So we decided to do a wet decon for this particular scenario, using water as our acceptable solution for solubility of osmium tetroxide. And that solubility factor is actually between 6 and 7 grams per 100 milliliters of water when it's at room temperature.
Right, so pretty soluble. It worked out really nice.
Yep. So all of our decon activities were to take place in the decon pool, which you can see is illustrated kind of near that garage door that Jeff was talking about. And we'd actually collect all the contaminated water from that decon within the pool and test it and then send it out per our environmental team.
Right. If I remember right, what we did is we tested it by pH paper, right? So obviously this is a corrosive. We wanted to make sure. So I think we've talked about in previous episodes that if we want to discharge this or even send it off site, it's got to be within a certain pH range. And so we use pH paper to test this water. So pretty easy, old school method, pretty effective.
It was. Keep it simple.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing that was
stupid people.
Well, you got to keep it simple, man. Meters will fail you. Paper is hard to fail, right? It's just it is or it isn't, right? It's kind of like a phrase: "Ball don't lie." Indicator paper, right? Indicator paper don't lie. It is or it isn't. So sometimes it'll change on you, right? Especially if we're talking like KI paper. Sometimes it can do a double switch, but it's very simple.
It is.
Yeah.
So once we had all these situations kind of squared away, how did we go about actually accomplishing this, Randy?
Yeah. So what happened was we had Entry Team 1 go on air. They went up to the second floor charge hood, right? Kind of once again where that green box was on the map. And then they went up there, and then Entry Team 2 was staged at the bottom of the stairs, right? Because we talked that we like to have our Entry Team 2 be line of sight with 1, right? Because we've encountered before where sometimes communications aren't great or their hands are busy remediating something, and our best communication is Entry Team 2 communicates back to the command post what's going on. But what happened was, so Entry Team 1 went down range. They went to the hood. Entry Team 2 went to the bottom of the stairs so they can kind of get line of sight on them. Entry Team 1 was able to bottle up the remaining solids that they had and contaminated rags that the operators had used previously. They bottled those up in one of those 1-gallon Nalgene bottles as planned. So then Entry Team 1 then moved on, grabbed the quench spray, that 5% solution, and they sprayed that quench solution all over the floor of the hood to get all the remaining osmium, anything that hadn't turned to a gas and then sucked up, get it bricked up. Remember, once again, get it converted over into osmium dioxide, which should be little black granules. Yeah, I know. Boy, I feel like I need to go to speech class or something. I don't know. I need the therapies.
We'll all be there together.
Fair enough. I'll see you guys there. So once again, they sprayed that quench solution on, got as much osmium sequester as they could as the lower oxidized state. And then what they did was they absorbed up all the quench solution and they contained up all the particulate that they had using rags, and they were able to get that into another gallon container. So then what they did was, which was a great maneuver, they had quench solution left in the spray bottle they were using. And so in the first bottle, they had the leftover osmium solids and the initial set of rags. The second bottle, the quench solution that they had and any osmium that they were able to get converted into granules. And then what they did was they took the remaining quench solution from the spray bottle and they split it between the two 1 gallon Nalgene. So there was an excess of quench inside those bottles to try and sequester any osmium left inside that hadn't been converted yet. So great work. It was good thinking on the floor because I don't initially think that was part of the plan. That was something that Entry Team 1 did, which was really phenomenal. And then easy peasy lemon squeezy, man. They bottled up the 1 gallon jugs and they walked it on down from the second floor and they put it by the decon pool on the first floor.
Yeah, and then from there, entry team 2, we did transition to the role of decon and began to actually perform that wet decon in entry team 1. Soon after that, entry team 1 was off air and they were all deconned. All the boots and gear were all bagged up. The suits, I believe we left there in a bag and left it for environmental.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
one other thing, though, the name of this episode was Divide and Conquer. So where does that come in at?
Well, that kind of comes in right around the time we were about to start cleaning up the scene.
It worked out well for me.
Right.
Do tell.
So let's talk about that extra call then.
So right as we were getting ready to kind of clean up, we actually got another call paged out to us from dispatch that a colleague needed medical assistance. That particular call took place all the way across site from our current location.
Right. Yeah. That's the thing. This is not the first time something like this has happened where we've been, had a couple calls hit at the same time.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's not something that we like having, but it happens.
Yeah. We had, I'd say, probably 90% of our medical staff or medical people at this call.
Yeah.
So I believe command said, I think about 4 or 5 of us hop in the truck and head over there.
Yeah. It worked out really well that we didn't have to try and muster support. We had all the support. We just had to cut off a slice of it. So it worked out really well.
Like I said, it worked out well for me because I didn't have to help clean up. So
I know. So it's sweet. You're like, peace, I'm out.
Although the bad part was I did have to write the medical report. That's just as bad.
Oh.
Paperwork's always a bummer. It's never the fun part of a job, but I'm sure everyone's got to do it in one shape or another, right?
But, and actually, though, that call that we had, it turned out it wasn't as serious as what the initial call was, but we didn't know that until, I think, several days afterwards. We thought it was pretty severe at the time, so...
Yeah, I seem to remember the radio chatter while we were trying to wrap up ours going back and forth. We thought it was pretty serious from where we were at.
Yeah, I was a little concerned.
So, so the way that unfolded, where we were all on scene for one thing and then a call came out for something else, we've had, like I said, we've had that before. But really, it's less common than sometimes what we'll have is we'll have 2 calls at the same time. They're really the same call where it's a hazmat call. Someone got exposed to something. And so we have to staff 2 teams at once, right? We have to staff a medical team specifically to do, patient triage and care, and then another team to address the chemical hazard. Where this one just so happens we had medical out for us, for our responders and stuff, and then another call broke out.
Yeah. That was good stuff.
Yeah. It all ended up well for us, right? We won on both calls.
Yep.
So, but speaking about that scene cleanup, man, how about
as some of us were actually going to another call, Steve, what did we do for the scene cleanup?
Yeah.
So for us that had to stick around and do that cleanup, weren't so lucky to get out of it. We after we performed the decon, the water in the decon pool was collected into 4 1 gallon Nalgene bottles, or plastic bottles, as Jeff said previously. And all those caps from the bottles were then sealed closed, and we taped them with chem tape just to make sure that nothing was going to leak out, because plastic threads tend to have a problem of getting either over torqued or a little angled on there and cross threaded and leaking.
Yeah. And this is like one of those things where we were really worried about because how toxic that gas is, if there was any gas in the bottle. And then in addition, this is a weird class of waste where it's actually heavy metal waste, which sounds cooler than it is. It sounds like it should be like some sort of ode to Metallica or Thrasher or something, but it's not that cool. It's more like it gives everyone in shipping and environmental health and safety heartburn. It's that kind of heavy metal.
Yep. So all 6 of those bottles, including the 2 that we had brought down to the decon pool earlier, were then placed into a single drum liner bag and sealed with zip ties. We then transported that packaged osmium waste to another on-site building for them to handle that's actually ran by our on-site environmental team. Gave them that headache like Randy talked about.
Right, yeah. Because I think what we don't want to do is, we don't want to deal with that at all. Because, it's weird because, like, in years past, like, I'll go back to in the good old days, ... we used to have our own on-site incinerator, and we just burned so many things. So a controlled substance we don't want, burn it. Anything like that, burn it. But now, the way we operate now, we don't operate that incinerator because of environmental permitting. It's just difficult to do. And so what we had to do with this is we took that specialty building because it required an environmental contractor and specific remediation to destroy this waste. So I had to be sequestered in a different building for a contractor to come pick it up to dispose of it.
Yep.
Oh. Yeah, so go ahead.
Go ahead, Randy.
Yeah. I'm stepping in all you. It's also one of those things where after the hazmat call and after the medical call, one of the things we do is we like to get back together and do a debrief. So I know we say debrief, but it's also called a hot wash. We talked about the call, like how it unfolded, how it unwrapped, including the breakout, the medical call, and how that went. Part of it is, we kind of review what we did well, what we could do better, what worked, what didn't. But then we also, put an eye on how everyone thinks the call went. And, it's almost like a half a nod towards critical incident management, right? Like tracking for stress, make sure everyone did okay on the call, and that things didn't get too hairy or hectic for people. But so
pretty much what went right and what could go different.
Right. But that's the beautiful thing, right? Because not only do we talk before the call, but then we talk freely after the call. And, all opinions matter in this, right? Because it's one of those things where at the end of the day, we're all equals. We're a group of people trying to get a job done and try and do it in an effective and safe manner. So it's one of those things where we did that debrief. I think it went well for us. Once again, an oddball call where we may have once or twice in my 17 years we've ever dealt with it. Not very often. And like I said, to begin with, I thought we were being punked. I could not believe that there's any way someone out of the blue would ask me, hey, how would you handle an osmium spill? And like 4 days later, it literally happens. Like I could have swore that I was being punked. But like I said, so we did that debrief. It went well. I think from a team perspective, we did well. I think we did good talking through our PPE selection, and we were all good with that, right? So one of the weird things we did find, though, is we had to have a bunch of batteries replaced in our air packs. We do routine maintenance on the packs, but for some reason we had like a batch of batteries that were bad, and so we had a bunch of air packs that went all low battery on us on the call.
I think there was a couple of us on entry team 1 and maybe 1 on 2 that had that problem.
Right. Once again, it almost seemed like you're getting punked. Like, what's this? What's going on? But like I said, other than that, I mean, if that's the worst of our problems, it was a good day, man. Batteries are an easy fix.
Yeah. And for everyone listening, it seems like this call went fairly fast, but I think overall it did go well. But this is a 2.5 hour, almost 3 hour call.
Yeah.
There's a lot of prep work that goes into this, especially with this nasty of a chemical.
Right. Yeah. And it's figuring out how to handle things like all the heavy metal waste, how to handle it thoroughly, completely, get it bottled up, making sure it doesn't off gas, making sure you capture it all, making sure it's a method of capture that doesn't let it vent through or explode or eat through the container it's in.
Absolutely.
So, and I come to think of it, there was one other thing that came out of the debrief. We tasked entry team 2 as RIT. And one of the constructive criticisms we had from our team was that we probably should have fielded 3 teams, an entry team 1, a 2, and a dedicated RIT, which we typically like to do, but for whatever reason, we didn't do it on this call. But once again, I was glad to hear it. It's always something to keep in mind that if we had to swap out to Entry Team 2, there would have been no RIT team in place for Entry Team 2. It didn't work out that way, but it is what it is.
So, share your thoughts, experiences. Have you had calls similar to this? What would you have done different? Reach out to us. hazmatharder@gmail.com.
Right. Hey, Jeff, what do you think we're going to be talking about next time?
Oh, I'm going to go with hotboxing.
Hotboxing.
I love it.
Yeah, let's see where that leads to.
My mind goes so many directions.
All right, everybody stay tuned. Tune in for the next episode. We'll see what hotboxing's all about.
See ya.
See ya.
See you next time, guys.